Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Phil Show. Are you a little afraid of sharks? Or maybe there's something about sharks that you didn't know that Dr. Greg Skomal, author of Chasing Shadows, is going to tell us about. Today, we're going to meet one of the most fascinating people I've ever heard about. He is probably, yes, I'm going to say the greatest expert on sharks. I know he'll say, oh, wait, because he's humble. But Dr. Greg Skomal has been on every television show, newscast, written up in scientific letters, and it is such a pleasure.
Nice to be here, Phil. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to start with an audio question. Ready? What does this mean to you? Close your eyes. Da-dum, 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 da-da-da.
How did I know you were going to do that?
I got to get the front tone in there.
Yeah.
Apologies to Maestro Williams.
Yeah. I hear that a lot. I hear it a lot.
What does it mean to you, though?
Oh, it harkens me back to my childhood, right? And it's because, that was an inspirational movie for me. And a lot of people don't say that. They'll say, well, Jaws was very frightening. I will never go in the water again. I don't even swim in a pool, yada, yada, yada. I'm scared of sharks. And for me, it was more motivational. I saw a particular character in that film played by, Peter Dreyfuss, by the name of Matt Hooper. And he was the scientist in the film. And when I saw the movie, I realized he probably had the coolest job on Earth. And at that point, moving forward, I thought, well, maybe I can do that for a living. Of course, all kinds of kids have childhood dreams. But in my case, pinch myself, it came true.
Wow. Talk about dreams coming true, right?
Yeah.
So you do have the coolest job, at least in New England.
Well, I would argue I do. I mean, plus I work for a state agency, so I would go so far as to say I probably have the best, state job there is out there.
Without a doubt.
Even though it has its moments, it has its moments. These fish can be dangerous, and that causes all kinds of problems sometimes. But it's still, I love what I do.
I want to go back to a little tidal pool. I don't know how many years ago, but in this little round pool, it looked like an exaggerated puddle. You saw two fins from a shark that was so dynamic. It makes everyone stop and look. And there you were on a phone calling in because this shark was stranded, right?
Right.
Is this where this whole thing began, or?
He kind of did. That was 2004.
Where?
That was Noshawn Island, one of the Elizabeth Islands. A 13-foot white shark swam into this estuary, so into this tidal area, and got trapped in a very small pond. It wasn't a puddle, but it was still not the biggest body of water. And I got a report from a friend of mine that this was going on, and I rushed over there the next morning with him, and we discovered that it was indeed a big female white shark. And we tagged her, and I was really excited because I placed, for the very first time, a really highly sophisticated electronic satellite-linked tag into the first white shark ever in the Atlantic Ocean. And so I thought that this is it. I'm all set. I'm going to get myself on the cover of the National Geographic.
Well, you should, right?
And little did I know that she would not leave. It became clear to me that she was trapped in this deep pond, and although it was small, and she couldn't get out. And so, over the course of the next 2 weeks, we struggled to figure out how to get her out of there, and ultimately we did. But that was the first indication, and kind of a wake-up call, slap in the face, if you will, for me thinking, there are great white sharks in New England, and I shouldn't forget about it.
More of this amazing discussion in a minute, but first, please like, follow, and share The Phil Show now. Hi, welcome back. I was thinking these are some very tough times that we're living in. With wars going on, people disagreeing, divisions going on. Is there any time that we can just take a pause and think of better things like God? It got me to start thinking about, inventions. Well, what does God have to do with inventions? This is how psychotic I am. Out of all the inventions in the world, all right? I mean, you can go right down the list. I think the cross, the simple cross, is the greatest of all. It has saved so many people who were lost. Just think of it. Starting out as a punitive way of punishing and killing somebody, it was capital punishment, to what it has done over the centuries in saving people, giving people hope. I think the cross deserves its mention right up there because it has affected billions and billions of people. What do you think? Is the cross worthy of the greatest invention of all time? I think so. Just a thought. Your comments are really important to us, so comment below because we really want to know what you're thinking here at The Phil Show Now. Now, back to the amazing discussion on The Phil Show Now. Tell us all about this resurgence of great white sharks around here.
It's a fascinating story, and I'll argue it's a conservation success story. There will be people who disagree with me, but really what we started seeing, and it was that slap in the face in 2004 when that shark swam into the pond. We started seeing seal populations rebound after 40 years of protection. And with the returning seals, particularly along the outer Cape beaches and throughout the Gulf of Maine and parts of Canada, there were fishermen reporting to us they were seeing more of these white sharks, and we were paying attention to that. Then in 2009, I worked really closely with small plane pilots who typically spot fish for me to tag. And at the time, we were tagging basking sharks, but we had also used these pilots to tag bluefin tuna, for example. And there's this small group of pilots who we call them spotter pilots. They work for the commercial fishing industry, and we've harnessed their efforts to help us. Well, one of these pilots was flying off Cape Cod, and he saw what he thought were two large sharks off Monomoy Island, which is of course, the elbow of Cape Cod. And he called me, and I got out there within 24 hours to go check it out with him. And sure enough, there were 5 white sharks swimming off these beaches. And if I looked at the beaches, there were also seals piled up on them.
Was this
so in
unusual?
Essence, well, it was because I had been studying sharks for decades, and I couldn't buy a white shark, right? And now I was seeing, almost half a dozen of them right along the shoreline here.
Because of the seals.
Because of the seals. And it was really the restoration of seal populations which amounted to, the opening of a restaurant, or arguably the reopening of an old restaurant. And with the reopening of that cafe came the customers, and those are the men in the gray suits.
Right. Did we save the seals too well, do you think?
Well, I mean, that's something that's debated now, right? At what point do we, have we restored a population, and do we need to control it? In the case of marine mammals, when the legislation was passed in 1972 to protect them, when that included all whales, dolphins, as well as the seals and sea lions, there was no clause that said when we get to a certain point, we'll stop. And there are those who argue that there's too many right now, and that, of course, it's leading to more sharks. I would argue that the population itself will control itself. It will reach an equilibrium. Having the sharks here feeding on them, let them do their job. Their job is to eat seals. And let's let
Stay out of the water.
in certain parts, we do argue that there are areas where you probably don't want to swim because of the presence of sharks feeding on seals.
Why do you call sharks charismatic? I was taken, I said, wait a minute, charismatic. Wow, that says a lot about everything that I never knew about sharks.
Well, I think it's, and I'm not the first person to say that. That's for sure. Sharks, and dolphins and whales, they're typically referred to as charismatic megafauna, right? Big animals that live in the ocean, and because they draw attention and they elicit human emotion, right? So, I mean, that in and of itself makes something perhaps charismatic. Sharks, and whether it's fear or fascination, but in many cases both. It's no secret that a great white shark will elicit those emotions in human beings.
You know more about sharks in a beautiful, positive way than most people on the face of this earth.
Well, I try to think of myself as being objective, an objective scientist. There's the little kid still in me that fell in love with sharks, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, right?
Yep.
And you could see that little kid every time, perhaps, I'm looking at a shark. But there's also the objective scientist in me, and I try to maintain that when I'm dealing with these animals. It's hard,
Yep.
We're trying to learn about them. We're trying to advance the science, and honestly, we're trying to enhance public safety with the research we're doing,
Sure.
which
Of
is
course.
important.
Of course.
But it's not difficult to see when I'm on the pulpit of the boat getting ready to tag a white shark how excited I am.
More of this amazing discussion in a minute. But first, please like, follow, and share The Phil Show now. Thank you so much. Let me thank the good folks at IGreen Landscape, your one-stop solution for your residential and commercial property management. Whether it's snowing or whether you're mowing, let Team IGreen handle your landscape and hardscape year-round. From spring cleanups to commercial snow management, I recommend the good folks at IGreen Landscape. Call for your complimentary consultation today. Your comments are really important to us, so comment below because we really want to know what you're thinking here at The Phil Show Now. Now, back to the amazing discussion on The Phil Show Now.
Once there was this photograph of you with the shark coming out of the water wide open. Do you remember that? What was that all about? And tell me about this.
Yeah, I remember
Incredible.
that. I mean, feels like it was yesterday. I want to say it was 2016 when that event happened, and it was, or 18. The years blend together, but we were out doing our research, and we work off a small boat. I work very closely with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. They provide a platform which is the Aleutian Dream, a boat that we work off, a 24-foot pursuit, yes. Mm-hmm. Captained by Captain John King. And so we were out there looking for white sharks. My plane was in the air, Wayne Davis flying the plane. He located a shark, but we couldn't see it. The water was like coffee, and sometimes Cape water gets like that. And you can't see down into it. So I was out on the end of the pulpit, and what I'm trying to do is videotape every shark before I try to tag it, Based on video we collect of both the right and the left side of each shark, we can tell who that shark is. Wow. So if I don't end up tagging it, I can tell based on color patterns. So I was leaning over the side of the pulpit, looking down. I couldn't see the shark, and out of nowhere, the depths, comes that shark, and it mouth wide open, reaching up, jumping out of the water, breaching toward me, and it was only a split second. So I didn't even believe it happened. So if you look at the video, which went viral, you'll see me go, did anyone else see that? And all I did was look down into the open mouth of the shark.
So surreal to you.
Yeah, incredible. And the shark couldn't get to me. I was safe. But nonetheless, no one ever wants to have that kind of view.
Could you smell its breath? Could you get into it? What was it like? I mean,
You know, with
no one's going to tell me but you.
well, it was a split second of my
Yeah, but
life.
what was it?
But, you know, I was incredulous that it was actually happening because we'd never seen that behavior before.
Wow.
But the shark clearly was coming straight up, and I could see its pearly whites. And then, you know, and one of the things about a white shark, and many species of shark can do this, is they could protrude their jaws, okay? They can extend them. Their jaws are not fixed to their skulls. Like our upper jaw is fixed to our skull. In the case of sharks, their jaws are suspended by ligaments and muscle. So they can actually extend them out. And you could see that. And I could see it that day with the shark's mouth fully open, its jaw protruding, and its eyes rolling back, which was clearly, in my mind, a predatory strike. And I'll never forget that image. It's burned in my retinas.
What do you think it was intending to do?
Well, you know, I think a lot about it. I've watched the video so many times that I'm now frightened by looking at it. But I think its intent was it perceived. Now, remember, put yourself in the world of a shark. This particular animal swimming probably 10 feet below the surface in very, very murky water, right? It looks up, and everything it sees relative to the surface is silhouetted. So you have to think of it as almost a two-dimensional image on the surface of the water that it interprets. Mm-hmm. So my movement, my image on the surface of the water for that shark likely represented some potential prey item. Mm-hmm. So it came up, mouth open, biting at that image with its momentum carrying me out of the water.
I agree with you. I think he wanted to eat you up.
I hate to put it that way, but it's entirely possible.
More of this amazing discussion in a minute, but first, please like, follow, and share The Phil Show now. You can now watch The Phil Show whenever you'd like. Like, follow, and share The Phil Show now. And catch us wherever you catch your favorite podcasts. Like, follow, and please share The Phil Show now with a friend. The Phil Show now. If you're ready to finally make your biggest dreams a reality, let my friend Jared Methia at Milestone Mortgage Solutions get you your next mortgage or your next home loan. Jared is a trusted local loan officer who works with some of the most reputable companies. Jared reminds me if you're a first-time home buyer or maybe you're looking to refinance. He says, go to him. And I, too, recommend Jared Methia, providing you with a stress-free experience. Call Jared today for a competitive rate, for quick approvals, and for one-of-a-kind personalized service. That's Jared Methia at Milestone Mortgage Solutions.
Can you teach me something brand new in 1 minute about sharks?
Well, I'll be specific to white sharks because that's been obviously the focus of my research the last decade or so. Even though I've studied a number of shark species over multiple decades here in New England. But as we begin to use the newer technologies, you got to understand, Phil, when I was a kid, or even in college, when I was at the University of Rhode Island, right, the tools that we have today didn't exist. I mean, laptops, telephones, none of that existed. Right. We used big mainframe computers, right? Yeah. And nobody wants to use those anymore because they're less powerful than our cell phones are. So now we're using newer technologies, and one of our early discoveries about white sharks is they don't just migrate like many species of fish north and south. You know, you look at most species that fishermen target off of Massachusetts, and they have a basic north-south snowbird migration. What some white sharks do is they migrate as far as the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And the real kicker to this is they'll dive to depths as great as 3,000 feet when they're in the middle of the Atlantic every day through this really broad temperature range. And of course, that's a really cool observation, but for the life of, I have no idea why they do it.
What do you think it is?
I think they're feeding. I think they're feeding on squid at depth. You know, and the squid down there provide a good, consistent source of food for them, so it's worth it for them to make these migrations. But, you know, completely blew our minds that these sharks were doing that. We thought they were simply a coastal species, you know, along the eastern seaboard of the U.S.
Yeah. Do they need to continually swim, or can they stop?
In the case of the white shark and many, many species of sharks, they do. They have to continuously swim because by moving forward in the water, they're bringing water into their mouths and over their gills. And so that's how they ventilate, that's how they respire, that's how they breathe.
How do they actually get the oxygen out of the water? I've been trying.
Well, like all species of fish, they have gills. They have gills. And so if you look at the side of the shark, not all sharks have 5, some have 6, some have 7, but you'll see these gill slits on the side of each head. So what sharks do is they ram themselves through the water with their tail, right? So opening their mouth, bringing in water, right? But they don't swallow the water, they just pass it out through the gills. And before it passes out these gill slits, it goes over the gills where blood vessels exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide, all right? So kind of the same thing that happens in our lungs happens in the gills, except the medium is water instead of air, right?
Fascinating.
So it's absolutely miraculous. And because they're ramming themselves, we call that obligate ram ventilators. And all that means is they have to swim in order to breathe.
Yeah, right. What a marvel of nature, huh?
Oh, yeah, they're absolutely incredible.
And yet most people not hate.
No, they do. There are people who have a deep disdain for sharks. Every day I'll meet somebody who says, I'll never go in the ocean. And I think they're crazy, but I don't tell them that at the time, you know. I'm one of these scientists that firmly believes it's not worth doing the science if I can't translate it and share it with the public. Particularly when it comes to an animal that can impact public safety, right? Now, shark attack is extremely rare. But it happens, you know, and it can be devastating not only to the victim, the family, but to the community, you know, and we've seen that on Cape Cod. We've seen it in the Bahamas recently. You know, this is what happens. So if we can educate the public about these animals, the truth about these animals, and not necessarily what they see on television, right? You know, Hollywood likes to exploit sharks to make money. I understand that. But they're not, you know, man-eaters. They're not killing machines. They're important animals that live in our marine ecosystem that has a very, very critical role.
What species, what shark would you, Greg, introduce Phil to? You know, you never know.
Well, you know, kids ask me all the time, what's your favorite shark? What's your favorite shark? And it changes. It does change. Lately, it's been the white shark, right? The great white shark. You know, but in this case, Phil, because you're tall, you're slender, you know, I think you're going to get along really well with a blue shark. You know, blue sharks are probably the most abundant large shark off our coastline. You know, you have to go out a bunch of miles to see them, but they're beautiful. They have this brilliant blue coloration. They're docile, but they get to be, you know, 7, 8, 10, 11 feet long. You know, the biggest ever measured was a 12-foot long blue shark that weighed over 400 pounds. Beautiful, slender, graceful, elegant animals that I think, you know, you would get along with.
I'm in love. Why has Cape Cod become a worldwide hotspot? You know, now they're talking about Cape Cod as you would Australia, you know, South Africa, all places.
Right, it is. It's become, and your choice of terms, excellent, hotspot. You know, it's one of the white shark hotspots. We recently published a paper that estimated over 800 white sharks visited Cape Cod between 2015 and 2018. So that's among the highest densities we've seen anywhere in the world. So it rivals South Africa, Australia, Guadalupe Island, you know, California. And it's driven largely by the seal population, right? think of it this way, and I use this analogy a lot. Many white sharks in the wintertime migrate offshore or south. And as they begin to migrate north in the summer, really the late spring, May, June, their first, they're cranking up I-95, right? And their first Burger King, right, is Cape Cod. It is. That's where they find the seals. And so they pull off the highway, and some of them get a hotel room and stay for the summer, and some of them keep moving on, get back on the highway and go as far north as Newfoundland, Gulf of St. Lawrence, parts of Canada. But think of it, south of Cape Cod, we don't have really any seal numbers. And white sharks love to target seals. If they could, they'd do it year-round, but they can't in New England because we get too cold in the winter. So they go down south, they stay warm, they feed on other things, but when they're on their way back north, they're looking for that rest stop that has seals, and that's Cape Cod.
Are we being cruel to them? What is the state of today's shark population?
Yeah, one of the things I try to do, I have a book that just came out called Chasing Shadows, and I document the plight and the history of sharks, really, on the eastern seaboard of the U.S. Not just white sharks, but I do emphasize white sharks in the book. I emphasize my own life and the trajectory of my career. But for many years, shark populations were maligned, killed, and harvested. And really was the harvest of sharks that led to dramatic population declines in the 80s and 90s. Now, what the U.S. did, and was really proactive, was to establish regulations that would ultimately lead to restoring populations.
The title of your book is very interesting, Chasing Shadows. Now, is this from the pilots? I was just thinking of the pilot looking down and seeing us. Shadow. Am I out of it or what?
No, you're not. Phil, you're actually not far from the truth. Because, there's a lot of meanings to it, and I think people that read the book will get a sense of it. My quest as a child to chase this species, which remained in the shadows for most of my life. Mm-hmm. And then when I actually got on the boat and the pulpit of the boat and we started seeing white sharks, at first all we saw were shadows, so we started tagging shadows. And, so there's a lot of meanings to it. And in many ways, I'm still perhaps chasing shadows. And I think the lesson for people reading the book, and even younger folks who want to chase something that they're passionate about. It doesn't have to be sharks. I don't care if it's whatever. It can be anything. You want to invent a shoe, whatever it is. I don't care what it is.
But volunteer.
But go after, chase that dream.
Chase that dream.
Certainly the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, the nonprofit on Cape Cod, which supports all of my research, is always looking for volunteers, and that would be like working with me because I'm involved so closely with the Conservancy. My agency takes on volunteers. I'll take on interns. I've graduate students. We do talks at schools. It's all about educating the public, engaging kids. Mm-hmm. All too often they hear that sharks are mean. Pick up the average kid's book, and it's about a shark, a mean shark. Right, yeah. That's the bad character in the film, and unfortunately, that's too bad because it's not as bad as they say they are.
Yes, you have a different perspective. What a pleasure.
It's been great, Phil, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you so much.
Like, follow, and please share The Phil Show now with a friend. The Phil Show.
As a papu, I know a thing or two about hugs, giving them to our grandchildren. Well, we're going to have a segment each time we meet called Phil's Hugs. We hope you enjoy it.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry to bother you. I'm a new dad and I'm a few dollars short for diapers. Do you have a couple of bucks by any chance? I'm sorry.
Do. I've been there and done that.
Are you a dad too?
I'm a granddad and a granddad.
Oh, congratulations.
Take this.
You sure?
Yeah.
The first person who is going to help me today, Frank, I have $500.
Don't you dare.
For you?
I'm 80 and I've got enough money to get me by. I'm good.
Are you sure?
I don't want to turn money down. My wife will kill me. I know God sends gifts, but I don't need it today. But there have been days when I did need it and I did get it.
We'll give you a hug. Is that okay by any chance?
Yeah, let me get myself up. I got a bad heart too. I got an aneurysm on my heart, and my heart, it could bust me. If I get to paradise before you, I'll save you a seat. How's that?
I love you, Frank.
Oh, wow. People are good. We'll see you next time.